Welcome to MarcusG.tv. I'm Chef Marcus Guiliano. I'm a chef on a mission. Jamie joins me today.
Hello.
Jamie, what are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about the corkage fees that a lot of restaurants charge in their restaurants for a guest to bring a bottle of wine into the restaurant. Can you please elaborate on that and tell us a little bit about what our findings have been?
Sure, that's a great question, because a lot of people just assume that it's okay to bring a bottle of wine to a restaurant.
Yes.
As in, they assume it's okay to bring a birthday cake. I think the first thing that you have to understand, that a restaurant is there to sell wine, to sell food, to sell the things that they spend money on.
Right.
Certain states are different, like New Jersey, for example, has a huge corkage policy. I don't know the exact way the law is written. I know in New York, because we're restaurant owners in New York, so I've studied upon this immensely.
Yes.
But in New Jersey, every restaurant can't get a liquor license, because there's only a certain amount of liquor licenses allowed per community, per township.
Right.
So if there's, let's say, 100 in XYZ township, and you have 250 restaurants there, and they haven't allotted for more liquor licenses, you have restaurants that are BYOB.
Right.
A lot of them won't charge you in New Jersey. Some of them do charge you in New Jersey. However, in the state of New York, it's set up much differently. So I'm talking in a perspective for the state of New York. And I know you're going to tell me, well, I've done this before, and there's websites set up for it, and this and that. BYOB is illegal. BYOB, to bring your own bottle to a restaurant, is illegal in the state of New York. Now, here's why. Because when you look at the law, the way the law is written, the law is written that us as restaurant owners, licensee holders, because we have a license, that we can only have on-premise in our building, right here, right now. Anything means whether a guest is sitting at a table, or it's in our office, or if it's in our basement, in our storeroom, in our wine cellar, we are only allowed to have on-premises what we have purchased through a licensed vendor. So if a customer walks into our door with a bottle of wine, we haven't purchased that wine through a licensed vendor. We're
liable.
We're liable at that point. And a lot of people swear, well, I've done this before, I've been charged a corkage fee. You know, there's websites that are set up for New York City restaurants, especially. Corkage fees, what they charge. Even Wine Spectator magazine has gotten it wrong, because Wine Spectator magazines will list, when we do our Wine Spectator list every year, when we submit our award, we submit our list, to get an award, they ask us if we're BYOB in the state of New York. So we have a liquor expediter, a guy who takes care of our licenses. All he does is do liquor licenses for restaurants, for stores, on-premise, off-premise in the state of New York. And he'll even do it for importers and wholesalers. He has gotten to the point where he's so adamant, like, Marcus, even restaurants that don't even have a liquor license shouldn't even do BYOB, because you'll get blacklisted in most states if you get caught bringing in a bottle. Now, it's even illegal, the way that it's been explained to me by this liquor expediter, who used to work for the Liquor Authority, by the way. This guy is a whiz. He used to work for the Liquor Authority for years. He even explained it to me, like, let's say you own a car dealership and you want to have a party, a staff party. For them to bring in alcohol to a place like that, to a public place like that, is illegal, because it's an unlicensed place. They don't have a license, and they need a license to have alcohol. So it gets really complicated. So if you're a brand new restaurant and you don't have a liquor license, you haven't filed for a liquor license, technically they advise against that as well. So when you see those signs, BYOB, and you see those restaurants doing it, it's just that they haven't gotten caught yet, or maybe the state hasn't really enforced that yet. But the way the law is written, it's totally illegal to be doing that. Again, the law reads is, us as restaurant owners, as licensee holders for liquor license in New York, we can only have on-premise bottles of wine, spirits, beer that we've purchased through a licensed vendor. That's the situation with that. So if you're walking in with a bottle, you're not a licensed vendor. Now, here's where the big part is, Jamie. Here's why they frown on this. A lot of people pick up special bottles of wine when they vacation.
Right.
They go to France, they go to California, they go to Italy, and they visit vineyards and they buy a special bottle of wine. And all of a sudden, 5 years later, oh, it's our anniversary, honey.
Let's pull out this bottle of wine.
And let's go to a restaurant and have this special bottle of wine that we might have gotten on our last vacation or a vacation 5 years prior or 10 years prior, and let's go drink it. The problem is if you're bringing bottles into a different state that hasn't paid proper state taxes.
Right.
That's where they're going to nail you. The state wants their revenue. They want their taxes.
Right.
So it's illegal for us to buy or have wine in the restaurant, highly illegal, that hasn't paid
The New York State sales tax.
right. The BF, the alcohol and firearms, the BFTA, whatever that is. It has to properly pay those taxes. And a lot of people who bring wine in didn't just go down the store to buy a bottle of wine. They've been holding on to a
Didn't
bottle.
go down the door to buy
Right,
a bottle.
right down the street. That's where the liquor authority really gets cranky at you. That's where, if we get caught with something on premises here that was not bought through a licensed vendor and paid the proper taxes, we can lose our license on the spot, and it's like a $10,000 fine.
Wow.
We can eventually get our license back, but we'll have, a mark on our license saying that we haven't complied with certain regulations. So those people that are walking in think nonchalantly, oh, well, why don't you, this and that. Now, a lot of restaurants still do. Now, here's the worst thing, Jamie. Restaurants that actually charge a corkage fee, we were told by our liquor expediter, restaurants that actually charge a corkage fee are actually admitting that they're doing it.
Right.
So now there's a paper trail, so if they do get inspected, they can go in their books and say, gee, you have 150 corkage fees here over the course of the last year, which means you've opened somebody else's bottle 150
Right.
times. So you're admitting your self-guilt right there. You've basically just put it out there. So if a restaurant does do a corkage fee, or does allow people to bring their wine in, documenting a corkage fee is the worst thing you could possibly do.
Right.
Now, I know as a restaurant owner and as a consumer, if you call the liquor authority of the state of New York and you ask them these questions, the person answering the phone is typically not qualified.
Well, they might not know the answer.
They're not qualified to answer these kind of questions. You'll get all different answers across the board. The person you have to speak to are the prosecuting attorneys. You have to speak to the inspectors, because the inspectors book what they're looking at when they come to inspect a place is different than what the person answering the phone is going to say.
Right.
Because the person answering the phone is not an inspector. They're just a frontline phone operator answering it, not involved in the technicalities and this and that. If you get any answers from anybody at any state bureau like that, you always get names. You always get confirmations. Who am I speaking to? Document it. Follow up with an email. Get a paper trail going, because if you get wrong information, these places do give you wrong information. That's one of the biggest complaints with the liquor authorities. Sometimes they just have no clue when they answer the phone. So if you're a consumer and you've called and you've gotten a different answer, then I'm telling you, that's why. That's one of the most common complaints. They don't know. So you have the attorneys who actually write the law. Then you have the inspectors who actually enforce the law. And sometimes those two, what the attorney writes to write the law and what the inspector does to enforce the law, they're not on the same page sometimes. So that's another complication. So here's the bottom line. As a restaurant owners, we don't want to take any chances.
No, absolutely not. And so as a guest, what they don't understand, right?
They don't.
They think that, well, other places do it, why can't I do it? So, you just have to respectfully accept that as a guest to a restaurant,
Right. Now, believe me, it's frustrating because when we go out, sometimes places have terrible wine lists.
Right.
And it's just like, okay, I'm not going to drink just, barefoot cellars. I'm not going to drink these run-of-the-mill wines just because I want a glass of wine. For me, if I'm going to kill brain cells, I want a good bottle of wine, right?
Right.
We want to have something that's decent, not expensive, but something that there's some thought put into the wine list and this and that. And a lot of times, that just doesn't happen at a restaurant. They're just buying run-of-the-mill wine. So it's frustrating. I understand the consumers. But now, in our case, we have 300 wines.
There's lots to choose from.
We have 300
from all
wines.
spectrums of the globe.
300 beers. There's something you can find at our restaurant if you bring in. We've actually lost customers over the course of the years because they've, not many, but one or two have been very adamant. And
About bringing their own wine.
And one was a local attorney, and our liquor expert even called him and explained the law to him, and it wasn't the answer that he wanted to hear. So of course he hasn't come back in 8 years because he only brings his own bottles of wine to restaurant. He doesn't expect to pay a corkage fee, or he expects to pay a very small corkage fee. And it's a shame because as restaurant owners, we're in business.
This is where you make money.
This is where we make money. We make money off of alcohol. We make
still
money
have
off
to pay our bills.
Exactly. We make money off of dessert. So when you bring in your own dessert, of course there's going to be some kind of cake cutting fee because we're losing the revenue.
Right.
We still have to wash our own plates. We still have to wash utensils. And the bottom line is that sometimes you break glasses, you break dishes, normal wear and tear. It costs.
Well, you have to pay insurance. You have to pay lots.
You have to pay a lot of things. So it's really improper for you to go to a place. Now, I've never really known a car mechanic that I would take my own parts to.
Right.
Very, very, very rare cases has that ever happened where I've taken my own parts to a mechanic. They get the parts for you.
Right.
Okay, so it's just like you're going to a restaurant. We'll get the cake for you. We might not be able to make the cake, but with enough notice for a birthday cake, we can easily order you a birthday cake from a bakery. We can order from 25 different bakeries and get it delivered.
Right.
So, that's the etiquette and the specific law here in New York. Each state varies. So please do research, but don't get offended when a restaurant tells you no, because you're dealing with a very, I want to say, exact law and exact regime in these states, and for a restaurant to lose its liquor license is
it's not worth it.
It's a very serious offense
Right.
of people's livelihoods, and to be able to put a restaurant in that situation. We had somebody who walked in last week with their own beer at open mic night, and I had to tell the guy this isn't acceptable. This and that, and he didn't understand it. He peeled the label off. It was clearly beer, and then when he went outside, he sat outside in our garden area, and I had to then explain to him that he's still on our premise, and that you can't bring an item into a licensed
Right.
place. And I'm sure he's done this before because he had the label
I had a
peeled off.
problem with a gentleman who brought his own food.
Right.
Yes.
You bring your own food. It's just like, what? We're a restaurant. We're here for business. I wouldn't, you go to a bowling alley and bring my own bowling pins and expect not to pay because I brought my own bowling pins, right?
Right.
I'll just use your lane. You're still using our table, whether it's a bowling lane or a table.
Right.
You're still using our facilities that we heat, that we air condition, that we put electricity to, that we have to clean, that we have staff. You're piggybacking on our expenses, and that's not the way business is done. That's really not proper etiquette for anything. So just be conscious next time you actually go to a restaurant and expect to bring a bottle of wine. Call ahead, find out. Possibly. Some restaurants have no problem breaking the law. Some restaurants have no problem at all.
Right.
And they will be happy to charge you $15, $25, $10, or not even charge you. But find out what the restaurant's policy is well ahead of time. Call them ahead of time. They might be like, "Oh wow, that's great. Bring your own bottle in." You just never know. Certain states like New Jersey, it's acceptable. So that's our not really our rant, but that's just our policy and our philosophy and our stance on BYOB here at our restaurant.
Yes.
So, Chef Marcus Guiliano.
And Jamie.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in.